Torture.
Okay. So a Praxis participant wants us to answer this Reddit question.
Is this like one of those like someone else requesting us to answer someone else's question? It's like, hey, will you like help my son become a better person? Or like, hey, I have this friend. Could you like just fix them? Like, it's not me, but just them.
Dude, every time I go somewhere and someone is like, hey, can you help my friend out? He really needs you. I always say, okay, but your friend has to be the one to send me a message. I never hear from that friend.
No,
ever.
Never. Oh man, that's funny.
Welcome to the Office Hours Podcast. This is TK Coleman and Isaac Morehouse. We're like the Geek Squad for your professional development. Got a job you're trying to get, a work-related issue you're trying to resolve, a project you're trying to complete, an obstacle that's holding you up? Well, you're in the right place. You bring the problem, we bring the nuts and bolts. This is where you get philosophical insight and actionable advice on how to take charge of your life and career.
Sort of reminds me of something Peter Daniels said. He says, no one has ever read a borrowed book. If you're not willing to invest in it, you're not going to read it. But that's not true.
But that's not technically true. I've read borrowed books.
Okay, man. So that's one thing that makes me mad. Like, I know that statement is technically false, but it's so beautiful. It makes sense.
No, but
I get the point.
The point of it is true. The point of it is, that if you actually want something bad enough to put a little investment into it, you're going to get more out of it. It's simple. It's not. It doesn't need to be technically true in every instance.
Well, you recently wrote about that, like how having skin in the game makes you a better decision maker. And whenever you see people being super indecisive, making everything complicated, there's usually a correlation between that and them not having to pay the bill. Yeah.
Ask somebody, hey, I'll take you guys out to eat. Where do you want to go? And see how hard it is for them to figure out versus if they're paying, they make a decision a lot quicker, right?
Yeah. All right. So here's the Reddit question. What roles should I look into based on the projects I enjoyed? I've been doing a lot of self-analysis, and I realized that I wasn't happy with the career path I was on. I was an accountant for 10 years. I enjoyed the following projects. What kind of roles should I look into? Here's a description of the projects. I like how different the problems are and that I'm able to use creativity to come up with solutions. I need a job making at least $100K with the possibility of making more, or I need to be able to grow. I already looked at project management and it doesn't match with my personality type. I like having new data that doesn't jive with the current platform and figuring out a way to get around the limitations of the platform. And teaching people how to use new functions and processes that I establish.
This is kind of a strange.
This is a real strange one.
Question.
Right?
It's like there's half context, but then half. It sounds like the basic question is like, hey, I've been in accounting for 10 years. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. What should I do instead? Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, I need to make $100,000, and I don't like project management. I don't understand that other note. I looked at project management and it doesn't match with my personality type. I don't know what looked at it means, but project management is so broad it can mean anything. I don't know that I would rule anything out that uses those words just based on some cursory glance. I mean, I don't know. This sounds like a weird question to me. The only thought that I have is if you're in accounting and you want to do something different, first see your accounting skill as an asset to build on. Okay, where are the skills that I have in accounting valued where I can either use that as an entry point? Okay, I'm going to take a role somewhere where they want my accounting skills, but I can see that organization has opportunity for me to parlay that into something different, or where that can be an added bonus that can give you an edge. Hey, I'm coming in to do this role, but I also bring this accounting ability with me that can help do this other thing. So try to use that as an asset if that's a skill you already have that not very many people do, and that can set you apart in a lot of ways. The second thing is, I would say go to lunch with 5 different people. You don't have to know them. Identify people that are within the realm of jobs that you think you need or pay range or things that are somewhat interesting, and just go see if you can take them to lunch and say, hey, I'm looking at a career move. You don't know me. I just want to buy you lunch and ask you about what you do for a living and learn about it. And do that 5 times with 5 different people And I think you'll probably learn more. You'll get some context. I don't want to get any more specific than that. I mean, I was thinking like, oh, product manager, blah, blah, blah. But again, that's such a broad term. It can mean so many different things at different places. I would just focus on, don't throw away your accounting skill. Use that as an asset or as an entry point, as a stepping stone, and then go deep with like 5 people that you can find in roles that may be somewhat interesting, and try to learn more through firsthand, conversation.
What if I was just like, hey man, you just need to stick with that job, bro? Like that alternative you described, you just need to stick with the job you got.
Well, I don't like, what would I do if you said that? Yeah, is that your question?
Yeah, what would you do if I said that?
I would slap you. No. I mean, if you know you
Someone's
don't,
outraged
if
right
you
now.
know you don't want the job anymore, then I typically would say, well, if you really need $100,000 a year, don't put artificial pressure on yourself by quitting before you've got something lined up. So start looking, but you can use your current job in the meantime as a, make sure you're taking care of. I don't know. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. So that was my answer.
Yeah. What was your question? I mean, hey Isaac, what if I said something else? Like, yeah.
What if I gave an answer that was like really provocative? Okay, I'm not gonna actually do that, but let me give a nice answer. So I don't think you can get anywhere by asking people, what type of job should I work given that I have these skills? To me, that's that old school kind of textbook way where it's like, I like logic and reasoning. Oh, you would make a great lawyer. I don't think it works like that, man. There is no such thing as a career in the abstract. There are specific jobs for specific companies. In fact, being something as specific as a lawyer looks radically different across 5 different companies with 5 different firms with 5 different needs. I think you have to go looking at specific offers and opportunities, and you have to make your decision about what you're going to pursue based on how specific descriptions make you feel. And in some of those cases, the only way you're going to know how they make you feel is by applying, seeing if you can get an interview, and using that as part of the process of discovery. But that's the only approach I know for something like that. I think the question falls into the trap of being too abstract in the quest for career guidance.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Imagine, let me try this analogy I've tried a few times. Imagine if you're on the market for a place to live, and you're like, hey, I need 3 bedrooms, and I need to be near, within 10-minute drive of an airport, and I need sufficient closet space and a 2-car garage. Should I buy a ranch, a Cape Cod, or a bungalow? And I'd be like, what? That's like an irrelevant consideration.
Yeah.
You know some of the things that you need, and then there's a lot of things that are going to be negotiables. I'd love it if it had a porch and had this. But what's really going to matter is getting out and seeing houses, and you may find that a style you never even thought of, right? Like,
yep.
Well, I think I shouldn't look at anything that's a ranch because I read somewhere that ranches often don't have 2-car garages.
Right.
That's like how this strikes me, right? It's
Yeah.
well, that's just stupid because sometimes they do, and who cares? Don't worry about the style of the house or whatever type or what year it was built. If you know the things that you have to have, the must-haves, and you know the must-not-haves, everything else is negotiable, and you're going to figure out there's more house types that could fit you. In fact, you may realize you find one house that you love so much, you're even willing to give up what you thought was a must-have, a 2-car garage, because it has some other thing going for it.
Man,
and you don't know that till you get out there and start experiencing and start looking. So find the best ways, whether it's side projects, freelance work, interviewing people at lunches, to get exposed. You don't know what project management is in every company, in every context. You don't know what most jobs are. There's probably 100 jobs that you could end up liking or liking well enough to accomplish your goals. And all these things that you may think are things you really want or need, reality is there's probably very few that are non-negotiables.
Man, that real estate example is so good. I mean, you just can't really get anywhere by approaching it abstractly like that. Hey, what kind of place should I live at? My rent's got to be this. It's got to be 3 bedrooms, this and that. I mean, you can put all that stuff in on a website, whatever, and you put, where you want to be. And sometimes you're going to get no results for that, right? Or sometimes you're going to get a bunch of stuff that has a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But at the end of the day, you got to look at the pictures and the descriptions, and then you got to go look at the place.
When you guys were moving to Charleston, correct me if I'm wrong, you were like, Now we don't want an apartment. We really want a house.
Yep.
So you looked at a bunch of houses and you just so happened to look at a few apartments.
Yep.
Well, guess what? The thing you ended up loving the most, given all the trade-offs, was an apartment.
Yep.
Because it wasn't like the concept apartment or house was the real thing that you had to have. You kind of thought it was probably more likely to find it in a house, but it turns out that you weren't. And like, you don't know unless you go and start looking, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because that distinction between what you're willing to say yes to and what you think you need in order to be happy, that sounds like you're settling. It sounds like a consolation prize. Sometimes you're willing to say yes to things that are different from the description of what you thought you needed to be happy, but it's not experienced like a consolation prize.
It's because it's a lack of knowledge, right? Okay, so I remember C.S. Lewis has this analogy he used where, you know, talking about, I don't remember what the analogy was for, but he said, you know, children who've never experienced a holiday at the sea, they don't know what it is. The best thing they can imagine is maybe some candy. And you're like, oh, you want a holiday at the sea? And they're like, no, I want some candy, right? Because they have no idea that's the best thing they have. And once you get more information and more exposure, you realize your list of things, actually there are other things that trump some of those, and some of those shift around. And so it's like, really be careful about how many things you add to that list of, well, it has to have this, and it has to have this, and it can't have this. There's going to be a couple, and those are okay starting points, but it's really about the exploration process itself.
This is why it is so important when you're early on in your career to not lock yourself into specific labels based on what you majored in.
I want to work in hospitality. The number of 17-year-olds I meet, well, I'm interested in hospitality. And it's like, what does that even mean yet? Like, it's okay if you want to use that as a starting point.
Man, there's so many times you see people turn down like really great opportunities because they're like, yeah, well, I want to work in operations, and I'm not sure if that's operations, right? Or I want to work in business psychology. You got anything in that? And it's just, man, there are specific problems to solve with paychecks that come along with that. Does this look like an interesting set of problems? But yeah, those labels can kill you. So here's another question about jobs for me without a degree.
Did you write this question?
No, but I wrote the little headline.
Jobs for me, but not thee.
Yeah.
A degree need not be.
I create a rhyming headline for every question just so I could satisfy my need to get my rap on. I was wondering if anyone would know of some good high-paying job fields for people who don't necessarily want to finish high school. For example, technology, related careers, or something along the lines of that.
That was one of those times where you wish you would have pre-read it first so you would have gotten the inflection a little bit better. A couple awkward pauses in there. I'm so mean. Unnecessarily mean.
It's the preparation. Preparation is good. Preparation is good.
I got to be honest. This question, and related to what we talked about earlier with coming up with lists of things, this question strikes me as almost simultaneously too limiting and too vague and open-ended at the same time. It's like too constrained and unconstrained at once. Yeah. So when I hear, hey, I was wondering if you know of some good high-paying job fields for people who don't want to necessarily finish school. High-paying. Well, what does that mean? I wouldn't lead with high-paying. I think that's the wrong approach. I wouldn't worry about earning. I would worry about learning. How's that? How's that, TK?
There you go. That was good.
High earning? No. Take high learning. So I would think more in terms of where are some entry points? Don't think of career fields, job fields. What do I want to be long term? What do I want to do for the next year or two? What's a good first step? Something that will give me a lot of exposure to new stuff. Something I don't hate. Something that has a lot of learning opportunity, and something that has a lot of upside. And I would see that as, you don't know enough yet to be like picking the thing that's going to pay you a lot of money. You're still in investment phase where you need to invest in yourself, invest in your ability to discover good careers, invest in your exploration of these things. And it's going to take you some time to get there. So rather than where are good fields that pay a lot of money? I mean, what are you going to do? Go look at the top paying jobs and be like, oh, electrical engineer, I guess I better do that. I would say, what's the highest return use of my next year of time? What kind of thing could I do that's going to give me a lot of return? It doesn't have to be the highest, but it just has to be something where it's like, okay, I think I could get this job. I think it would push me a little bit, and I think I would learn a lot. And by the end of it, I think I would be a lot further and closer to what I want, getting some reality, clarity than where I am now. And then the vague side is like, for example, technology related careers. Well, today every career is technology related.
Right.
I mean, really, like every career is technology related. And then, you could work at a software company doing something that has nothing to do with technology, or you could work at a company that's not technological doing something with technology. So that's not a very useful distinction for the most part. So I would just say, think about, what do I hate? Don't want to do anything that I hate. What am I terrible at? Don't want to do anything that I'm terrible at. And then look at what's something that I could do for the next year or two that I could give a shot at, go out there and try, and that has a lot of potential learning and upside, where I'd be around people that maybe make me better. I'd be exposed to new ideas or new industries. And I would approach it that way.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to zoom in on the part for people who don't necessarily want to finish school. I know a lot of people are going to tell you, oh, well, you need to abandon that. You need to finish school. So I want to validate that part. But there's something that I think is easily misunderstood about our message on
you want to validate
that
people
degree.
Will say that, not validate that that's necessary to go to school.
Right. I want to validate the fact that I do think it's possible to build an amazing career without going to school, without having a college degree. Totally think that's possible. But something that gets easily misunderstood about that is there's a difference between saying you don't need a college degree and that it's going to be a cakewalk. That the reason you don't need a college degree is because people are just happy to give away jobs. That's not the message. A college degree does serve some function, namely that of signaling something. We can argue all day about the declining value of that signal or how insufficient that signal may be, but it is a signal of some kind. And if you're going to opt out of getting that signal, you need an alternative signal that's going to be better than that. And so if you're going to take the approach of saying I'm not finishing school, then that means you're taking on a little pressure to prove yourself. And you're going to have to take responsibility for proving yourself. And so I'm in total agreement here with the whole idea of don't start with high paying, start with what's going to give me the opportunity to develop some skills and put me in a position where I can show people what I'm really worth. Because walking through the door, if you're just at the level of school dropout, people aren't going to be looking at you with the attitude of like, oh my gosh, we just can't wait to hire you and give you as much money as possible. They're going to be looking at you like, prove yourself. And you want the kind of opportunity that's going to help you prove yourself, even if that's an opportunity that at first glance might be a bit disappointing. Don't underestimate the jobs that are a bit disappointing. You want to optimize for strategy over status. It doesn't matter if people are looking at you as if you're smart or as if you're successful because of your job title or the company you work for. What matters is that you have a way of using that job as a learning experience, that it offers you the potential to leverage it into something else.
Hey, just like we say, well, at least I say, finishing school is not really an accomplishment to me that is that valuable. So if you come to me and say, hey, I got a degree, will you hire me? I'll be like, I don't care about your degree. What can you do for me? Not finishing school is also not an accomplishment. Mm-hmm. Dropping out is not an accomplishment. Hey, I dropped out of school. I didn't get a degree. Will you hire me? I'll be like, I don't care. What can you do for me? And so saying, I want to drop out of school. What kind of job should I get? Well, I don't really care if you want to drop out of school or not. The question is, what do I want to start getting experience in? Degree or no degree, high school diploma or no diploma? What's the next best thing to get that? Your status as degreed or undegreed is frankly irrelevant. And wrapping yourself in the identity of a rebel dropout is no better than wrapping yourself in the identity of my status as a 4-point GPA student. Those are irrelevant to your value creation abilities. So go learn to build some stuff and go learn to prove some stuff, and don't worry about the other part.
Drop the mic. I made a mistake at work. I made 2 errors on a client's first Facebook post/ad with us, and it ended up being discovered by the client. The situation ended okay. The client didn't quit, but things could have ended much worse. The client leaving, insisting on reviewing everything themselves, causing pipeline issues, etc. It sounds minor, But 1 second. But when your job is to launch ads with complete accuracy,
Are you having a seizure or something?
I had an Al Roker moment.
I was super worried that like you were gonna Isaac, I can't see anymore because you started to squint and like, would you stop staring at me? That's so weird. Okay, do you want me to finish this question?
For those who haven't seen the Al Roker clip, this is one of Isaac's favorite pieces of content online.
I think you shared it with me the first time.
You love it though. You watched it like 50 times. There's
How
a
do you?
YouTube video
It's not even true.
of Al Roker. I'm like the people who comment on your tweets.
He's at like a parade or something, and then he just starts staring at the camera,
and nobody acknowledges it. Right. Nobody says anything about it.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Anyway, so
So how do you bounce back from mistakes on the job, both major and minor, like this?
I mean, nobody bats 1,000. Like, nobody expects you to bat 1,000. If you're gonna make some mistakes, it's not a big deal. Honestly, you approach every at bat as if I've got to do it. I've got to drive in some runs. I've got to, and I'm going to succeed. And then you leave every at bat being like, most people bat 300. Like you're just gonna miss them. That's totally okay. The clients know that. Yeah. Like, remember, even though you want to treat these things like the pride in your work and you want to sort of go in with a high stakes mindset, you also want to be able to sort of mentally, go home or walk away from the desk knowing that like, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, not for your company, not for the other company. I mean, in the moment, people get stressed and mad, but that kind of stuff happens. It's really not a big deal. The longer you go, you'll get better at this, not because you'll get so much better at, not feeling bad about mistakes, but because you'll just realize that mistakes are really frequent and everyone makes them, and it just won't seem like that big of a deal.
So this guy I used to work for at a seafood restaurant, Mike Russell. He used to always say to me if I started to go into an apology, he'd always be like, "Don't apologize. Apology is a sign of weakness." And he would always joke around with me like that. But I think what he was trying to get me to see is, hey, man, it actually makes things worse if you get too dramatic and long-winded with that apology. And sometimes we're so eager to let people know that we feel remorse, that we're sorry, that we mean well, we're never going to do it again, that we go into oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And you can actually make things worse by talking too much about what you did wrong. Just own it, but be non-dramatic about it. Just own it succinctly. State your knowledge of why the problem occurred, what you're going to do differently, and keep it to a minimum. I think apologies should be very concise and firm. It gives them more power.
This is where the idea of replacement cost is kind of empowering as well. Because if you're like, yeah, that's true, I did make this mistake, but if I wasn't working here, the next best person, would they be someone who never made a mistake? No, of course not. Your relevant comparison is who could they replace you with? Everyone's going to do that at entry level in a new role, especially. I'll never forget early on in Praxis, one of our early classes, we had placed a participant at this company. I was really excited about this startup. The founder was somebody who had done some really successful stuff in the past. I'd met with him and I had hyped him up, and we were real early trying to prove ourselves, trying to get businesses to be excited about taking our participants. And he agreed to take a participant, and the participant flaked out, ended up getting booted from the program. And by the way, this happens, right? Our graduation rate is like 87%. So some percent of the time, people, it's a tough program, it's not a fit, whatever, and it doesn't always work out. And so he had been at the business partner for a month or two, was not doing very well, and just kind of flaked. And we had to, and so I remember I called the business partner, and I was so worried because I wanted to continue to place people with him and stuff. And I was like, man, I am so sorry. This is below the Praxis standards. We did not know coming in that this guy struggled with this thing here, and we had tried this, and I'm really can't believe it. I hope you'll give us another chance. It will never happen again, blah, blah, blah. He's like, first of all, it will happen again. He's like, it will happen again. Don't worry about it. He goes, I've hired hundreds and hundreds of people in my life. I hire people all the time. He's like, my batting average is like probably 65% or something. Like at least 30, 40% of the time it doesn't work out. And I don't expect that to be any different for Praxis. I'm hiring people. You're sending me people. They seem good. They're not always going to be good. Like, I don't care. He's like, businesses aren't going to, that's normal. That's business. And he's like, and you got to be prepared for that too. And I was like, oh, He was totally chill about it. I was like, oh, okay. Even though it was a huge deal and it was a big deal for us then early on, at the same time, it wasn't a big deal. There's a certain amount of error that's sort of baked into the equation. Now, if you get to the point where you're like, I'm literally making more mistakes than anybody that would be able to replace me, then either you got to bone up or maybe there's an area that you can find a different role that's a better fit for you, but don't worry about it.
Yeah, one of the things I like to say is when you get a break in life, enjoy it. One of the most self-defeating thought patterns you can get trapped in is that of thinking about everything that goes right. Wait, hold on. Why are you laughing? What's going on?
I don't know. You said that like it was a candy bar commercial. When you get a break in life, enjoy it. It was like, a Kit Kat or something. Like one of the things I like to say, you just said it sounded so like rehearsed and like the diction was clear and it was witty and,
I've been planning that. I've been planning on using that phrase for 3 weeks.
And then you pull out like a candy bar and take a bite and smile for a minute.
When you get a break in life, enjoy it. Or how about this?
Brought to you by Snickers.
When you get a break in life, enjoy it. You always got to be auditioning, man. Always.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm terrible.
For bookings, please call me at 1-800-TK-Coleman. Yeah, but it's really easy to develop this habit of treating everything that goes right as something that could have gone wrong. And then instead of enjoying the fact that it went right, you're worrying about, oh man, like, what if that had gone wrong? That would have been rough. Well, you know what? It didn't go wrong. And learn from what you can learn and move on and enjoy the break. That simple. All right, I got one from Pedro. And this is, what are the ethics of having a side hustle? What is your experience with taking the skills that you are learning at your full-time job and applying them by doing side projects in other companies on a part-time basis? What questions should one ask before doing so? And as an employer, what downside would you see to having an employee work on side projects for other companies, even if the company is not a direct competitor? Goal of the question: I personally have built a skill set in helping our CEO and other team members land speaking gigs and create back-end systems to monetize those opportunities. Because of that, there have been opportunities to consult other organizations on that, which came from documenting and sharing my results. Just confused as to how to approach the situation.
Why don't you take this one first?
Hey, I want to give you a shout out first for attracting all of these opportunities to yourself by documenting your work. This reinforces what we talk about all the time, the value of learning out loud and showing your work. Don't wait until you've mastered it and then come back 10 years later when you've fulfilled all your dreams. While you're in the middle of putting together a system or learning how to do so, document it.
And a good problem to have. You've got market demand outside of your current job. Other people want you to help them with other things, and you can see your market value.
Absolutely great problem to have. So look, there are two sides to having a side hustle.
There's a left side hustle and a right side hustle.
Right side hustle. Okay, so the first side has to do with...
I saw Lolita visibly laugh at that joke. I'm glad that was a dad joke level.
Yes, so the first side you've already dealt with, which is competition. Are you helping out the competition? And that's something that I think ethics does come into play. Like, even if you don't have any kind of legal obligation or whatever, it could be looked down upon by your team. It could create some problems. So if you're going to help out the competition, I would tread lightly on that. I would talk to somebody about that. I like to hear what you think. But you stated in this question that it's not a direct competitor. So that leads us to the second side of a side hustle. And that is the potential that it has to distract from your work. I look at this like I would anything else in life. If you want to go to the gym outside of work hours, if you want to, go to a doctor's appointment when you're not at your job, whatever, you have a life outside of work and your life is yours and you get to do what you want. I don't think it matters if that's a side hustle or if it's recreational stuff, so long as you are not putting yourself in a position where it's compromising the work that you do. When your life outside of work is causing you to perform poorly at work, then yeah, everyone's going to judge you. But the way you stay out of that is when you go to work, you handle your business and you do well. Everything else outside of that, to me, I think that's fair game.
Yeah, I think that's generally right. I like to ask myself a question. If you didn't tell anyone at work that you were doing this and they found out, would they be mad? And if the answer is yes, then you probably ought to talk to them ahead of time. If the answer is no, they wouldn't care, then you're fine. But if it's yes, then think about how you can make it a win for them, right? Now, first, it may be, this is rare these days, thankfully, there may be something in your employment agreement, like a no moonlighting clause, or like a, where you're not allowed to do this kind of thing. And you can go look at whatever you signed when you started working there. If you don't know, you could ask somebody, hey, do we have any like restrictions against, doing any side work or whatever? But if you feel like you have to talk to them, if you feel like if they found out, they would be like, what the heck is going on? Then I would think about how you can make it a win for them. And just, I would try to structure it as telling them rather than asking them, as long as you do it in the right way. If you don't go in and be like, hey, I'm doing side work, like real combative or whatever. But if you're like, hey, I just want to give you a heads up in case, because I don't want you to like find out and wonder what's going on. My role here is my number one commitment, as you know, and I'm going to continue to crush it. And if I am not in any way, I trust that you're going to tell me. My goal is to do my job and above and beyond my job. In the process of doing this, I've started to get some clients coming to me and asking me to do this thing on the side. So I've been doing a little bit of that, and I'm going to do a little bit more of that work. If at any time that becomes any distraction from my work, I'm going to always put my work here first. And I trust that, you're going to tell me that. But I wanted to give you a heads up and let you know. That's actually how Praxis started. I was working somewhere else and I started on the side. And I went to my boss right away and said, hey, I just want you to know, I've got this idea for this like apprenticeship program. I'm putting it together, and a website's going to go up. You'll hear me like tweeting and talking about it and stuff like that. And my other job did not involve me doing any like online promotion or anything like that. It was all sort of behind the scenes. So if you see me talking about that, that's what's going on. I don't know what the future is with this thing, but it's kind of this program. I think I can run it. And my job here is still my main focus. And it was for about 4 or 5 months. And Praxis got enough traction, and I came to them and said, hey, somebody has come and offered to be an angel investor in this thing. And I did not expect it to happen, certainly not this fast. I just wanted to see where it could go, but I got to take the opportunity and run with it. And they were fine. They were fine with it both ways. So I think that's a good question just to ask yourself, would they be mad if they found out?
I like that question. It's also, you also just kind of presented a case for how it can make you more valuable. I think in any relationship, you become more valuable to that relationship when you have something constructive going on outside of that relationship that you can bring back to the relationship. When the more you get into the habit of making this the end all be all of your existence, you're not bringing any new energy into the relationship. You're not acquiring new experiences, learning new things, and you're just probably going to keep producing along the same lines.
We've got a great track record with the Praxis team over the years of a lot of different side hustles and projects. I mean, Chuck runs cooklikechuck.com, where he puts in a decent amount of time. It's not monetized for the most part. He's done podcasts before. I know he's done some consulting work with people on websites before. I know we've had, when Ryan Ferguson worked with us, he did podcast editing for a bunch of people. You've done podcast hosting for other companies.
My life is a side hustle.
You're like, and I think I'm always excited by that, because to me, it like expands the reach and influence of our network, our potential to come in contact with talent. If somebody comes and says, hey, this one client I have for photography that I do on the weekend, they mentioned that they have a web hosting service and blah, blah, blah. Like sometimes that's how connections happen.
Yeah.
I think if you do it well and you're open about it, and you also use it as an opportunity to brag about your day job and things like that, it can actually be a win-win for both.
All right, man.